This is Jessica Taylor interviewing L Roane Hunt on June 19th, 2013 at the Hunt residence, and it is 2:15 p.m. Mr. Hunt, can you please state your full name?
L Roane Hunt.
Okay, what is your date of birth?
February 20, 1939.
All right, and where were you born?
Born in Toanna, Virginia, James City County.
Okay. When did you move to Gloucester?
Let's see, I moved to Gloucester, I lived here briefly, starting in 1950 to 1952, and then I returned in 1979, where I built my home.
House. Okay. What were your parents' names?
Lester Lee Hunt and Huldah Roane.
Okay. And what were their occupations?
My father was a shipyard worker, and my mother was a school teacher.
All right. Do you have any siblings?
Yes, my brother Willard. He's three years younger, and sister Martha 10 years younger.
Oh, okay. Wow. What did they end up doing?
My brother was a school teacher, athletic director in York County.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was a teacher, then I went to work shipyard.
Okay. And what about you?
Oh, I'm a mechanical engineer, worked for NASA,
Okay.
retired from NASA.
And that was pretty much your occupation throughout. Okay.
37 years.
All right. We're there right now, so this might not make sense to you, but where do you live in Gloucester County right now?
Oh, we're at the on T.C. Walker, where the Rome's post office was located.
Okay. And we're going to start at the beginning. What is your earliest memory of Main Street?
Main Street. I went to elementary school, 1950.
Mm-hmm.
That's my earliest memory of it.
Okay. Tell me about it.
Passed through it to get to Body Type Elementary School.
Did you walk?
No, the bus ride.
Bus ride? What were the buses like?
Just the standard yellow bus. Is that what you?
No, just tell me about it. If you're on the bus and you're 11 years old, what is it like?
Well, the bus came out of Robbins Neck, 90, and passed through here. And then it circled down in Zanoni, picked up some kids, and then came back to the school.
Okay. So what did Main Street look like at that time?
Well, my parents were running the Roane store.
Mm-hmm.
So they were the competition. That was like, they were putting us out of business.
Main Street was?
Yeah, that was like going to Walmart today. Yes, Main Street now, is hurting for business. People go to Walmart. Well, back in those days, anybody that the people that had to walk came to our store and needed to borrow money. If they had cash and they had a ride, they'd go to the big stores up in
Main Street.
Main Street. And so we sold gas, so we bought gas there. So we didn't use the gas stations and in the courthouse. Mm-hmm. But it was a kind of it was a convenience there for the local people to shop in our store.
Mm-hmm.
Now Main Street occurred, and then they had the 7-Elevens and the other stores, convenience stores. They all took the business away from Main Street, and also now the big shopping centers
mm-hmm.
take it off of Main Street. So as time progressed, you see the different shifts in the way people purchase things. But the courthouse was really the place to go for us to go to school. And I think all the Boy Scouts, we have Boy Scouts there. And we had church there, Newington Baptist Church. But that's the only reason you go to the Bordays.
So you wouldn't get anything special from the drugstore or anything like that that you couldn't get at your store?
Right, this was general merchandise.
Mm-hmm. What years was it operable?
Well, we were, my parents ran it from 50 to 52, as I said, and they had purchased the business from a distant cousin who had run it for 35 years. And then originally my grandfather started the store.
Okay.
So, I don't know when my grandfather bought the property, it's 1877. And
Wow.
set up the post office at Roane's. Actually, it turns out he became a partner of Will Ash, who's modernized the bridge, the ferry at York Harbor. But they were partners here. He came to work here as a clerk and lived there as 12 years old. And then he married my grandfather's sister, and then he modernized the ferry World War I time and became very rich and started Tidewater Construction that built the bridge originally. so he went on to bigger things. But that was my grandfather's brother-in-law.
Okay.
And, but then my grandfather was, a Civil War veteran, and he gave up the store business in like 1915.
Okay.
He had married my grandmother's second wife, who was almost 50 years younger.
Wow.
So she lived on, and then my father had lost his job in the shipyard, laid off temporarily. So that's when he bought the business over here, and so I lived over here briefly running the store.
Great.
But, that's a long answer.
No, that's fine. So did the store close in 1952?
My grandmother stayed on and just kept it open for bread and milk and drinks for people to stop at lunchtime.
Okay.
And into the 60s, to the 1960s.
Who delivered your gas?
Good what?
Who delivered the gas to the general store?
Well, it was Amoco gas,
It was
but I don't know
Amoco?
who delivered it.
Okay. So, but it wasn't Texaco?
No.
Okay. So what was the relationship like with rival distributors like Texaco and Exxon?
I don't know that, I don't remember any particular competition. I was just, 10 to 12 years old.
Right.
I pumped the gas, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why, I don't know how they, who was really delivering it. I'm aware of the Ware River, where they did the gas out of there, and I guess Texaco was part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for Amoco, I wouldn't have any idea.
Yeah, Amoco was kind of one of the big, I guess at that time, they were the big name.
Yeah, I think you're right. So as a 10 to 11-year-old, describe a Saturday at the store.
Busy. That's when everybody came, Saturday night.
Right.
So the store's down there, and it's still there. So, but people would sit around the stove on the benches and things, wait till their turn to. It wasn't self-serve. You just go there and ask for stuff. Go to the counter and ask. And things were distributed around where the customers could reach it, but they basically most of the stuff was behind the counter stock.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of charging. Everybody, and of course, the black. Actually, most of the customers were black because the white people had cars.
Yeah.
But my grandfather really, when he set it up, the store, he also started the Roane's Wharf, and so the Wilson Creek Farm, the Meredith there they too built that wharf, so they had a kind of a connection there with the workers at the Wilson Creek would get credit at the store, and my grandfather would buy stuff for the farm and it would be shipped through the Roane's Wharf.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
But it was busy and people charged mostly. They come in and pay $5 on their bill and then charge
Okay.
15. It was pretty hard to get people to, pay up there.
Right.
Oh.
So where were the black customers coming from?
Walking.
Just within walking distance?
My grandfather had bought a lot of land around. I could see it in the records in the county show where he had land bought up and he would sell it to the blacks. So you could see where he was planting the customers around. He was helping them with their, with getting their property.
Right.
Generally people walked. There were a few, even at that time. The time when they would have cars in around 50, they would say zip up to the courthouse.
Right. And that wasn't particular to the black population.
What do you mean there?
When did African Americans in the local area start to get cars?
Well, some of them were getting cars at that time. That's when they were starting getting cars.
In the 50s.
And everybody. But there were very few tractors. A couple black people had tractors really. And that was real big. They drive by, but all of our land was plowed by mule. No, the black people were around, and actually all of my playmates, I taught them, they knew baseball, where we use a rubber ball and a stick, but even 1950, but I taught them basketball, and I taught them football, and we built a diamond and everything
Wow.
in the area here. So we were Thornton boys and the Page boys, and so we had a lot of activity together. But I had to go on a bicycle 4 or 5 miles to find one of my schoolmates to visit.
Mm-hmm. So did you get a sense that the people that had to walk to the store, that their home life was different from yours?
Well, we weren't. See, when we moved here, we didn't have indoor plumbing, or didn't have toilets. So that's the first thing my parents did, was to put a toilet in the house, or build a bathroom, and they probably didn't have that. I went to their we played ball. My mother wasn't too keen on it, but we played up their house, and I remember she would tell me, "Don't go in the house now. You just play outside. You got to put things like that." And,
Why is that?
Huh?
What's
I
the?
don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it's just her idea.
It happens.
Actually, of course, my grandfather, there was a black man that came with him out of the Civil War, and he stayed with the family from till he died. He actually, my grandfather, this 5 acres back here where it's wooded, he had actually sold that to the man that worked for him. He came out of King and Queen, and for $100. It was a 2-story house back here and 5 acres for $100 around 1900.
Wow.
And then my mother said when she was growing up, and my grandfather died, and he was the man that's still there, and
Right.
and he ate meals with them.
Wow.
So there was this relationship, but I guess the question of whether or not. Well, when I lived in Hampton on the street, we had a street full of children that we played with, before 10 years old, but we weren't allowed to go in the other houses. It was just a matter of privacy, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
And,
Do you remember the name of the man that lived in the 2-story house?
Yeah, he was a Robinson. Robinson.
Okay.
Can't. Now that you ask me, I can't think of his first name. but I heard it many times. But he married and had I don't know, like 10 children back here. And his wife, was a cook for my grandfather before he actually married my grandmother.
So considering that most of the clientele is black, is the interior of the store segregated in any way?
Yeah.
That's really
Now,
interesting.
I remember the Ingalls coming, they'd whitewashed plantation. And I remember the boys, coming into our store. They weren't regular customers, but they showed up one day. I remember after they bought plantation. The lawyer, let's see, Breckenridge is a lawyer now. I think he's the youngest one. He was probably it was his older brothers and his father that came in the store. So they were white people, the Emersons, and eventually they ran the Sewell's Ordinary restaurant. They lived up the road, and I would have to haul water from our well was like it is down there now. It goes dry in the summertime, or practically. So it's only 15 feet deep and a 3 foot diameter. And our 2 cows would drink it dry. And so when I was 12, I would drive the truck, and I would go down and get 2 50-gallon barrels of water morning and then in the evening to water the cows. I started driving at 12 around here, and I started cutting grass. Now my customers were mostly the black family. Their lawns had never been cut with lawnmowers.
Wow.
The chickens would peck it, and and they would the weeds that would get up that wouldn't be eaten by the grazing. They would just hit it with a slinger blade. So when I would go to these, I had like 10 customers, and I'd go to these places, never been cut with a lawnmower, with a power lawnmower. And there would be oyster shells and cans and all kinds of stuff, and I had to clear out to cut those. But I did have a customer at Houlihan's. Now, see, they ran the Edge Hill, was it Edge?
The service station?
No, the movie theater across the road from at that time. And so actually I cut the grass for them. It would take like 4 hours to put the push lawnmower. They lived on Wilson Creek. But they were friends and everything. And actually they would on Saturday nights, they would give us, my brother and I, rides up to the theater. And that was one highlight of our life. They would pass by our house and pick us up on the corner. And then we'd get to go to movies. And I just was reacquainted with their daughter, was a couple of years younger than I, Carol Houlihan. And so she settled up near Washington, I think. But we just got to meet, renew our acquaintance with her recently. So
That's wonderful.
Cause she would come, well, on a few occasions, she came up to play with our brother and I. Again, we're talking 11 and 7 years, 8 years old. And I think her mother must have figured that we were too rough for her to come up and play.
So would you ever end up at the movie theater or the roller skating rink or anything like that?
I might have, but we weren't too big on that.
No.
You mean up at Cow Creek? There was one there, a roller skate.
Yeah, I think so. Or the hardware store or anything like that. No.
No, so we sold hardware. Our big thing was the summer swimming lessons in Burton Pond. The bus would pick us up for that. 2 summers I did that. And Boy Scouts, we had Roger Moorman, who was designed the Mob Jack sailboat class. He did a lot of racing of that. I saw that in the newspapers when we moved to York County later. But we had about 6 or 8 boys, and he would take us on trips with that sailboat, and we'd go camping, and so that was a good experience.
Did you ever notice an increase in tourists kind of doing that same thing?
Did I notice a tourist?
An
No.
increase in tourists doing that same thing?
No.
No.
Actually, the black people see all the ones that gone north, the family members would come home in the summertime, so that was a big thing. You talk about cars now, they would come home with it, and they'd be sporting around the area, because they'd have these, big church meetings and things that coincided with their visit home for the summer. So if you want to call that tourist.
Maybe not.
Tourists were, goodness, this was after the World War II, and I guess the Korean War was coming up in 52 or so, but you didn't think about tourists.
No.
Just surviving.
Fair enough. So I'm just trying, because you're in a unique position in that you experienced general store life in the 50s, and Main Street life is opposite that for
Right.
all parties invested in the general store system.
Right.
So I've noticed that a lot of the African American population did not go to Main Street because they were not welcome there. Did you ever notice or hear anything about
Well,
that?
they couldn't get charged. They couldn't get credit.
Oh.
See, everything they bought, they didn't use money. Every once in a while, they might have a little money to pay off some of the bill, but I just noticed in retrospect, and actually most of this is in retrospect, looking back on it, I noticed, because when our parents left the store business, everybody owed them, and they never got paid for those credits. But the person who really had to have money to go to the courthouse, and they had to have transportation.
But you didn't notice any kind of legal segregation of bathrooms or restaurants or anything like that? No?
Well, generally, see, they weren't public restrooms, period.
The reason that's interesting is because there were public restrooms at the service station. So it's kind of an issue of finding out about that. That would be.
Well, it was just something that was there for the convenience of the people that came as customers. But
Okay.
but if the blacks didn't have cars, they didn't buy gas.
That's, yeah.
Most of them. Generally, there was some that would use their horses and things. But
Do you remember any kind of local traditions that you would do every year? Like how Main Street now has the Daffodil Festival and the Halloween Parade, things like that exclude Main Street, particularly here.
no, all my experiences were. I'm surprised, really, that I was active in the Boy Scouts, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to get out, rather than just doing whatever around just at your own house. But I picked daffodils for people that were raising them, and I don't know if I know my grandmother we had a lot of them planted, and she would mail off boxes of daffodils. I mean, a lot of the private people, but I would actually pick for like Airville, big farms for about a penny or two a bunch or something. I don't know. But I thought all our activities were around church and Boy Scouts and 4-H. I joined the 4-H and had a calf for that. But
What was the 4-H
all that's through
tradition?
all that's through the school.
Oh, okay.
School, that's right.
And that was when you were in like 6th grade?
Yeah.
What were the traditions for 4-H? Just pretend I'm unfamiliar.
Well, they were emphasis on farm is the part of it, and I think they promoted poultry and gardening and then dairy, and so I was drawn to dairy. We had 2 cows here on the place, and then I signed up for a registered calf, and so I got in the calf club. It's called Cow Club or Calf. Anyway, I got that just before we moved to York County.
Mm. Did they have the competitions that they have now?
Yeah, they had the judging of things that I didn't stay. I wasn't in long enough
To do
here
that?
to do that, but I knew the older boys judging and also carrying the animals to the fair.
Where was that
I
occurring?
think the fair. I think West Point, but
So it's like a regional thing.
I don't. I never did. I don't remember going to the fair. We did. We had small fairs in York County and in Warwick County when I'd carry my animals to there, and I was the only one that had animals there.
That's interesting. What about Boy Scouts? Where did the Boy Scouts take you?
Where did what?
Where did the Boy Scouts take you?
Well, I don't remember any of us getting above tenderfoot. It was a time when I was described earlier with Roger Mormon with the sailboat, so everything was around the sailboat and trips into Matthews, and then we had one jamboree or something down on York River on Yorktown Beach. I remember we didn't have uniforms, but so they had a big jamboree there. I remember we sailed right up on the beach, and everybody was that was a big thing. Even though they had all these uniforms, maybe some of ours had shirts maybe from the time, but we did. Anyway, it was. I remember one of the men I talked to. I was going to write up about it, but when I called up one of the fellows that had been in the Boy Scouts with us, said that Roger Mormon was taken off of being Scoutmaster because he was an atheist. Maybe I shouldn't be in the record. But scratch that. No, but he was a very good, effective leader in that, and during the few years that I was in it.
Right. So you had Boy Scouts, 4-H.
Well, I don't see it because my family was always big in sports, and so the hardware store. You're talking about hardware store. The hardware store in the Main Street, they sponsored a softball team, and so I was catcher, and Dre Dane was pitcher, and BC Sutton was second. Did you run over something?
That one did. This one's okay for now.
Okay. But anyway, they sponsored it. We had a shirt with a flag on the front, a t-shirt, white t-shirt with a flag on the front. That was sponsored by the Clemens. I think Wilbur Clemens sponsored this softball team, but we didn't have anybody to play. The boys on there from Gloucester, they all, of course I played at York, and so I played against them when they got to Gloucester High School. But,
Wow.
So we had that activity. And, I think we played a team that came up from Guinea. But they had all kinds of ages. They had people older than us and younger, but they were ragtag, and they couldn't compete very well. And I think we played some group put together from West Point. There was all kinds of ages that we played against them, but it was pretty hard find a team, anything to play.
Right.
There wasn't a league.
So what I actually hear is that you were better than everyone, and you beat.
No, we were
everyone.
we were well sponsored, and we were organized, and as I remember, and it was just, in other words, it wasn't an organized league. So then the question is, who are you going to play? You know.
Right. So what other kind of business stuff, or what other kind of stuff did the businesses organize?
I don't know. I just had that softball.
Yeah.
Because you see, the Clemens had a son that was a few years younger than I. He wanted him to be on the team, so he started a team for him. But
That's awesome.
But his son didn't get to play. I don't think.
That's amazing. So you left in 52 to go to York, right?
Right.
You came back in 1970?
79.
79. What were the biggest changes that you noticed?
Well, I guess the county just developed the same way that say York County did. I mean, it's just in the 50s, it was typical of what I saw in York County, and then when we moved there, then the York County changed. Actually, I came back here because York County, they were developing the property around in York County in developments, and it got crowded, and so I was open, which I didn't like living here when I was a boy.
You made it sound so picturesque.
Picturesque.
Yeah, it's not.
No, well, up to 10 years old, I was down in Wythe area of Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
And there were row houses, and there were basketball courts across the road that I played on, and everything like that. But when I came over here, I had to make my own.
Mm-hmm.
And it really didn't have very limited, in terms of other kids to play with, and even though I organized what I could. But when I went to York County, then we, of course, we got into school, organized sports and that type of thing, and organized church activities too.
Mm-hmm.
But when I left York County, except for the fact that it was a lot more populated, when I came over here, it was pretty much the same. And I had relatives here, and I had old schoolmates and things that I knew. Because, like I say, I played 4 sports in York County, York High School, and then I played against Gloucester. So the guys I played with in Gloucester, then I played against when through the 4 high school years. And so it just was, I guess, I looked at what we hear as being rural and more like a bedroom community I worked in, Langley at Hampton. Mm-hmm. So I had to commute till I retired in 94.
Mm-hmm. So your great grandkids are sitting out there, right?
Yeah.
What do you want them to know about Gloucester? What stories would you tell them? I'm not trying to trick you. You can do this.
No, I know. That's so much. Oh, so well, I don't know. Actually, see, all my children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, most of them are right here, and so we interact all the time.
Right.
Actually, a lot of them. 3 of my daughters settled in Matthews, actually,
mm-hmm.
and so 2 of them are there now. And I enjoy documenting, the times.
Right.
And I try to. So we've done 32 journals that are family stories, and I've fed my stories in there along with trying to get other people to do the same. And my grandfather, let's see, where's that? Oh, when I first learned about my grandfather, he died in 1920, so then I took all the papers, letters, and stuff that were in a box that they gave me, and I transcribed them into a book. And
Wow.
so I've been able to pass that kind of thing on to them in terms of the different time periods.
I mean, it's obvious to you, but why is this meaningful to you?
What, the past?
The lives of people that
Yeah.
you never knew.
Well, I guess in my 19 years of retirement, see that's been my main hobby, is to document the what people were like that paved the way, you know, that established, you know, what we now have, and what made those people tick, and what they were like, and of course my whole life around church, you know, being a Christian, and actually when I joined the Genealogy group, that was the first organization that I had been a part of that wasn't part of the church, so I was going a little secular there. But,
Whoa. I just said whoa.
yeah, that was I'll question whether that was a good step. But, and so, it's actually my father was born in James City County like I was, and my mother got her teaching degree. She grew up here. My mother grew up here, and so her first teaching job was in James City County. That's where I met my father. So, but he was Lester Lee Hunt, but his father was Wilbur Lincoln, born in Massachusetts. So they were evidently my grandfather. He died before I was born, but evidently he was born under Lincoln. North, you know, of the northern end, and then when they finally settled down in Virginia, he named my father after Lee. So,
Wow, that's something else.
but anyway, so my hunt came from up in New England,
Right.
so they were Puritan, and so and my grandfather here came out of the Anglican Church and the Methodist.
So the religious aspect of your ancestors is important.
Oh yeah, actually that describes who they were. That's the best description of who they were. But
Would you say?
Because when they talk scripture, I know it's the same scripture that I taught. So it's a common thread to, and then the group and the church movements that they were a part of, it's kind of defined, you know, somewhat who they were too. So I enjoyed. I hadn't done much research on the Hunt side because that was already established and given to me right straight. But I had to do a little more searching for the Roane side, I guess, on the other side.
Okay. Yeah, this is all really great. Are there any other anecdotes that you can share with me about Gloucester in general?
Well, you were asking with Texaco. That's my one of our relatives married Howard Brown, who actually.
He was married? Howard Brown was? Wow.
My relative.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
No, I just assumed that the one-armed man would be single, but I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. I don't remember the story on how he lost that arm.
Under a piling.
Oh, mashed, crushed. I was just looking up his family. I take my see the let's see.
So who did he marry?
He married Kathleen Hazard.
And that's someone, so you knew Howard Brown?
Cause she died in '67. My family was close. I guess after she died, right, my grandmother, husband died, and then she remarried and married a Beverly Crump, and they moved to Woods Crossroads. And one of the daughters, Lillian, and then she had two marriages. The first marriage was to the Hazard, who was evidently somebody on a steamboat. I guess you know the steamboat connections out of Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I don't know where Hazard exactly came.
Do you know how they got together? Did you know them personally?
Now Howard Brown.
Yeah.
Now his daughter, the Kathleen. I guess I must have seen her as a child, because I understand it was to have her first child. She actually lived with us down in Hampton.
Oh, okay.
I'm told. I don't remember that.
Oh, okay.
She came down when she was close to delivery so she could have the child, in Hampton. Because her aunt worked for a Dr. Hunt.
Right, okay.
But that was our family doctor too, that with. And Kathleen. And she had a son. I can't remember what it was. Do I have his name? I don't have his name on there. I don't know what his name was. I saw him some time ago. Now that Kathleen's mother was a Lillian Crump in her first marriage, but the youngest Crump girl that was Alice Crump, married to Kemp, and they ran at one point a little beer joint or something across the road from the Texaco station.
Oh, I was wondering who owned that.
You're familiar with a little store? It's a parking lot now.
Yeah, I was told that there were 3 watering holes and 2 of them were on the other side of Main Street and then one was way out and catered mostly to black folk.
A watering hole?
As in a beer joint.
Okay. Now see, I remember visiting, it must have been at the end of the war or something probably, because he ran Eddie Kemp ran that service station. I saw in the census 1940 in Hampton, and his wife worked with a doctor.
Oh.
And I'm told, and then he was running that. I think they had a gas pump out front. I don't know, but and they would serve meals, and that's what his wife Alice. That was she turns out was my mother's favorite aunt. They were just a few years ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
But she always thought so much of Alice. But and it's the only time they could visit with Alice, because during meal times in the evening she was busy cooking. They were a restaurant. It was a beer joint, but a restaurant, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they would do is go up to this one occasion I can vaguely remember going up there to try to see Alice. And I remember being located there, and actually her daughter that's older than I am, Alice Lee, she didn't, I asked her about it, she didn't remember her being there, because what they did, they located down, you know where Damon's is? That one?
Mm-mm.
Across from the old Walmart, across from Hardee's.
You do?
It's a Damon restaurant. Well, when they left the watering hole across from Texaco, they built, or I guess they bought a same kind of a restaurant situation on the Walmart side. but when the road was made 4-lane, it took their property, and so they built across, which is now Damon's, but they call it Cup and Saucer. And so I mostly remember going to the one that was across the road that was essentially where the Walmart parking lot is now, I guess. The old Walmart, I'm sorry. What's that area called, you know? You don't know?
There's
Okay.
always the Tractor Supply there now.
Yeah, that's right. I just refer to it as old Walmart there. It's got Hardee's and what else they got? They got the restaurant over there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Big lots.
and so they would, I remember, to this day, I don't like to put a fan in my neck because that's what they had a pool table. I remember, you know, in the bar, the beer joint part, and then they had a restaurant off to the side, and then, but that fan going above the pool, and it was interesting going there, you could knock the pool balls around, but I was too young to do much of that thing. But I always associate those fans with a pool table. But anyway.
That's wonderful.
But really, Scott, we got on this talking about Howard.
If you just have any anecdotes about him or anything like that, you know.
Just that it was just a sad thing that he lost his wife. She was very, I've got pictures of her, I think.
Oh, if you do, that would be wonderful.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Here, let me shut this off for a second, okay?